This is the first video in a 4-part video series I'm doing on backhoe digging tips and tricks. This is going to be the basics, and then I got another video of advanced tips and tricks. The third video is going to go more specifically over the geometry, understanding your specific backhoe and how to get the most out of it, most power or speed depending on your situation, and just thinking a little more deeply about different geometries you get with your backhoe. And then the final video is just going to be all the shit that I forgot in the original 3 videos, all the comments and different things that you guys send me, that stuff that I overlooked or maybe mistakes that I made. So all together, all 4 of them, it should be a very good series, something I wish that I had that I couldn't find when I was first starting out with my Harbor Freight backhoe just over a year ago. We bought the little $3,000 backhoe from Harbor Freight. It's a little towable backhoe with a 9-horse motor on it, and it just was way too slow for what we needed. My wife and I determined that that backhoe probably, on average, if you had optimal conditions, I would say maximum you could dig 20 feet per hour. Average, in reality, with harsh conditions that we had, we're talking all of this is digging down between 1 and 2 feet that I'm referencing. On average, we dug actual 6 feet per hour. That was our average speed. Average speed on this backhoe, this is a Coyote CK 2610 and the associated backhoe for that. This digs average 25 feet per hour. It can dig a maximum of 100 feet per hour. We've gone as fast as that in optimal conditions. And then I would say the slowest we've ever done, we've dug in some extremely hard soil. Everywhere we've dug on this property, and my father's property, was very hard. And we dug about 6 feet per hour in some of these spots. And just to give you a quick sample here, if you look over here at these rocks, we just dug a 12-foot section of trench over off the side. And a lot of these rocks are so big that I can't even lift them up by myself, a few of them. So this is just all in one 12-foot section, just 2 feet down. And then we've dug in caliche on this property. We've dug in hard pack across roads, and we have also additionally dug in clay and any other soils that have been difficult. So we've got a lot of harsh experience, and I hope that some of my experience can help somebody else get started. So tip number 1, don't roll your eyes at this one. This one is maintenance on your backhoe. I did one thing that I think is extremely important for everyone, is adjusting the pressure relief valve. I got this pressure relief valve, we already have one in the loop from the tractor. Adjusted at your own risk, but I cranked mine all the way up, meaning that I get more power, more pressure, and more power. That I was running a pressure relief on my valve up here all the time, and after I adjusted, this one never engages. It always engages in the tractor, and I got a lot more power out of it. So adjust your pressure relief valve. That's a good tip, or you can just adjust up a little bit at a time. But again, if you go too high on it and you don't know what you're doing, you could burst something or destroy something. So do it at your own risk. Greasing all your bushings and stuff. Yes, it gives you a little bit less friction, but that's not why we're doing it. What happens is if they wear out prematurely, you get a lot of slop. And as you're trying to move quickly back and forth and keep moving, all that extra slop is just a little extra time you have to wait for everything to settle down so you can go into the trench and things like that. So make sure you grease. If you have bushings, replace the bushings on your, if they need it. Replace the bushings on all your pins. Tighten that up. Take away that slop on your system when it gets there. That'll help speed you up while you're digging. And then additionally, go around and tighten up all your different bolts and things. This particular backhoe, I waited a while before I tightened up, and I could see in some of my videos I was getting a ton of flex from it. All that extra flex is just wasted energy and wasted time that you have to put just that much more distance and that much more energy into the system before it's bouncing back and forth and before you can actually dig. So make sure if you properly maintain it, it should be a lot better for you, and everything should operate a lot faster for you. So number 2 is very basic. This is something I no longer do, but I did to start with, and it helps a lot, is paint a line. And then after you paint a line, at least 1 or even 2 lines of where your trench is going to be on the ground. That helps keep you centered and keeps your line straight. You can even place a rock out directly where you're heading to make sure you stay straight. But as you dig, you'll kind of twist and turn, and you can really end up creating some really crooked trenches and just wasting a lot of time and energy. So when you're starting out, go ahead and paint some lines in there, put some rocks and some markers up for yourself, and that'll help keep everything straight and make sure you're not wasting energy by digging a bunch of curves. Number 3 is to plan the placement of your pile. Where is it going to go? Take into consideration things like fences and other trenches that might join up with your other trench. You don't want to place a pile somewhere you're going to have to go and move it later, dig back through. Additionally, if it's up against the fence, that makes it really hard to bury. My first consideration is always, how easy is this going to be to bury it? My first choice for burial is the front loader to just come from the side and push it back into the trench. Second choice would be a box blade to go ahead and angle that. You can back over it or pull forward, whatever you want to do, but just push it in there. And then the third and final choice, if I can't avoid it and I had to put it somewhere in a tight situation up against near fence or something, you might use your backhoe and use that sweep function to sweep it. One more thing is I dig on a lot of hills and things, so when I can, I go ahead and place that pile. If my trench is here, I place it on the downhill side so you don't get dirt rolling back in. That makes it a little shorter path and makes it a little easier. And then if you can get behind that pile and bury it, makes it super quick. Just that little detail will save you a lot of time and headache when you go to bury up your trenches. So number 4 is to make sure that you have 1 foot of spacing between your pile and the trench. This barrier does 2 different things. Number 1, it prevents stuff from rolling back into your trench and making you do extra work. And then number 2, and probably more importantly, is whenever you have to go back over that trench, because even though we have the best of intentions, maybe you leave it open for too long, stuff blows in, you have to dig a little deeper, whatever it is. If you have to go back over that trench, you've got some space for your tires, and your tractor is not sitting at a tilt, making things more dangerous, making it harder to dig properly again. So go ahead and make sure you have at least that foot barrier, and if your tractor's a little wider, has bigger tires, you might even shift that back a tiny bit more. I have some drawings here for number 5 and 6. This is number 5. Make sure you're digging from bottom up, not the top down. If you're trying to dig down into dirt all the time, not just when you're breaking soil, you're going to be wasting a lot of time and energy. Both of these would be acceptable paths where you're just digging that 1 foot of space. If you got really hard dirt, you might have more curves like that, or if you're really soft dirt, you might be able to even take out full-on rectangular bites there if you're looking at your trench from the side. A lot of times, I'll watch videos of people, and this is what you see them doing. They're taking bites where they're taking long sweeping cuts and trying to always scrape from the top, and then it's taking them forever to even get 1 bucket full. So dig from the bottom up. That wall's really weak. When you stab into it and rip up like that, if you stab in and rip up, it'll break real easy. Now number 6 is to always be aware of the teeth line of your bucket. So you see this, if you just shoot out a line from that teeth line, that's where it'd be. So be aware, according to the top of your bucket, you can always see the top of your bucket most of the time. So know what the bottom of your bucket is doing. You want to stab into stuff, stab into the dirt. A lot of times you'll see people try to take a scoop and they'll hit with the teeth kind of down, and there's a lot more surface area there. So you're kind of pressing into the dirt. Whereas if you put it correctly oriented, you'll stab into the dirt, make it a lot easier. Wiggle a little bit, get that space, and maybe you'll rip up and get that dirt out of there. So I got my son's toy here to demonstrate this one, but this one is keep all 4 tires off the ground when you're digging. And the way I can explain this one is that if you imagine this pivot point right here is the only point touching the ground, and you're trying to dig, it's going to be very easy to move the tractor. Then if you set both tires on the ground, it's a little bit harder to lift that, but you can still lift and move around the tractor, which is the case with my tractor. But if you set this front bucket on the ground, not only the front bucket on the ground, but make sure the front edge is what's the pivot point on the ground. And then you try to lift up the tractor. Your tractor might be strong enough to do it, but for my tractor, if I want to shift around the butt end of the tractor, I have to lift this front bucket. But it makes that pivot point where you get all the weight and force pushing down on that. And so I have the tractor up right now. You don't even need the parking brake on. Even if you have the parking brake on, you don't have the front bucket down, you can easily push or pull the tractor when it's in park. But you can see here, I can spin the back tire, I can spin the front tire. And if you look at the front edge of the bucket, that's the front edge of the bucket, and the arm stabilizers on the back is the only thing touching. And that gives you where you don't get a lot of flex in that backhoe. When you go to dig, it's not pushing it up and flexing a ton. You're up off the ground, and it makes things move a lot faster and much more stable and gives you more digging force into the ground. For number 8, this is about moving over trenches. Eventually you're going to have to move back over a trench that you already dug, and there's some things that can make it a lot safer and a lot easier. Number 1 is if you can have 2 people, that's always better. That gives you a second person to react to either the front or the back. With this tractor, you can see that you can have 2 people, one driving and one staying on the backhoe. If that's not the case, that's fine. And just some other things that you can do. We always leave these stabilizer arms on the backhoe all the way out. We're worried about a cave-in on the trench. So if the trench caves in and you fall, you can tip, roll your tractor, possibly hurt yourself. Additionally, keep the bucket on the front loader down, hovering low to the ground. So if all those are hovering, something happens and gives way or is about to give way, I would have my wife up front and me in the back, and I'd be able to stop, drop a leg down, stop it from crumbling in the first place, and then if I need to shift myself, make sure that front bucket's not down, and I'll take my backhoe and just, if that front bucket's just hovering a little bit, I can reach over, and whichever side I want to shift to, you have to reach to that side and grab, and pull yourself over a little that side or the other side, because you can't straighten yourself out when you have a trench. You don't have that turning space. So if anything shifts a little bit, you need to shift yourself back. The backhoe is a good way to do that. So do not stick the backhoe bucket down in the trench. A lot of people will do that, and then if you shift a lot, and just think about it, what happens is it binds up and twists your bucket, and you can bend the crap out of your bucket, your joints. You can destroy your backhoe very quickly by trying to reposition yourself by going and lifting yourself up from in the trench. If you ever do that, it's only tiny movements. Most of the time I always reach over to one side or the other, whichever side I'm trying to pull to, pick up that side of the tractor and just pull yourself over. Shifts really easy that way. Number 9 is to know when it's time to get a backhoe thumb. Backhoe thumb, we got a lot of rocks. That's what I mainly use it for. If you're gonna dig out a lot of stumps, use it for that. Anything you need to pick up and move. I end up using it more than I knew that I would. I got this hydraulic backhoe thumb. I highly recommend if you use it a lot, but if nothing else, it's extremely inexpensive to get the mechanical backhoe thumbs, where you come out, put a pin in it real quick, jump back on, move a rock or two out that are very large, and then come and move it back yourself. I've got this one from Michigan Iron Equipment. This is their hydraulic backhoe thumb. It's got a little foot pedal control, so you don't have to take your hands off the controls. I highly recommend it. I did a full review on this, and I've been using it for a long time now, and it's absolutely great, and it's extremely powerful. So I highly recommend, if you have the same tractor backhoe setup as me, check into Michigan Iron Equipment, see what they got for you. My last tip here is very basic. It's tip number 10. If you're going to operate a backhoe for the first time, before you break ground, go ahead and practice. The way you can practice, get your backhoe running, get it running, keep your speed low to start with so everything's moving nice and slow, and take and stretch that all the way out as far as you can reach. Put your teeth line parallel with the ground, about 6 inches off the ground, and practice moving that all the way back towards you, 6 inches off the ground the whole way, and do that back and forth, and that'll give you a really good idea of how you work, and it becomes second nature. You can't really learn it without doing it, but that's a really good way to not cause a bunch of extra work for yourself to start with throwing dirt everywhere and dirt falling back in and breaking down your walls and everything else. So I highly recommend doing a little practice. And as a bonus tip, if you got a tractor set up like this and somebody else can operate and drive forward, when we're going really fast and we have really clean soil, really easy digging soil, we'll have 2 operators. So my wife will drive and listen to a podcast or do whatever, and I can just dig back here and move forward very quickly and not have to jump off and back on, back and forth. So that's a bonus tip for you. I appreciate you all. Everybody subscribing, everybody liking, leaving comments on this video. I really appreciate anything else that I got wrong or anything else that you think is a good tip. Watch the advanced video before you go making comments on this video, and I'll bring all the tips together in the end. We'll have all 4 of those videos put together. Thanks for watching.